Okay, so we're talking about the YouTube page. They have the Facebook page. Again, people usually come on the Facebook page, like Alicia said. I think you're even on here somewhere. I saw you posted on here. They'll respond if you have a screen capture. This is where you actually on their page where you do the downloading. They also have example rigs, and I'll show you in the latest version. Hopefully, if everything works properly, the latest version has a interface where you can download all of those rigs, which is kind of cool. It should work theoretically. We'll see. What I did is I placed my advanced skeleton in my home directory. If the network is acting a little weird, you may have some problems with advanced skeleton. They say in their documentation, or they will tell you that it doesn't matter where you put it. Like if you want to share advanced skeleton with other users, you can place it on the network and share it with them. It's just so long as it doesn't move, because it's looking for that folder structure, those file structure. And when you download it, it's going to look like this. You'll have an advanced skeleton. This is what you're going to get. You're just going to get an advanced skeleton folder. Inside the folder is all of the nice scripts and everything that runs it. And the install, this is the advanced skeleton 5 mel. The install mel command is here. Theoretically, you just drag it into Maya, and it's going to install Maya. It's going to install advanced skeleton. Now, of course, the mistake I just made was I dragged it into a location in my Maya shelf, which I don't want it in that that shelf. So I can just do. I'm going to do a new scene. Drag it. Go away, Maya. Okay. It's gonna leave it in that shelf, I think. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I guess I'll just stick it in my animation or custom. Actually, custom. So again, you can take the install .mel, drag it into your Maya. You can launch it here. So yes. Okay. Oh, nice. It just mounts it automatically. That's pretty sweet. The first thing I want to do, actually, I want to bring in a few of their rigs. So I'll do that now. Just to show you what the advanced skeleton rig looks like and what its capabilities are. They have a Cody rig. The snook is the fish. Let me bring in Cody. Okay, so you've seen this dog rig, this Cody dog rig, which is kind of cool. So what I don't want today, I actually don't think I want to bring in Cody, because since Cody is a quadruped, actually this Cody rig is really good for animation, for quadruped animation. You've seen this rig, I think, coming around. Actually, I want to load up something different. So in the about, okay. So in the about section of the advanced skeleton, what I just did is there's an ability to dock the window into your Maya, so you can use the dock function. You can check for updates and get the updates here, and it'll load it directly into your file structure wherever you put the folder, or wherever the folder is. Let me load in one of the Max rigs, actually. So I'm going to go to their website and download their Max rig, so we can look at him. So I want to look at him. Sorry, I just drop him into my, let's drop him back into my documents folder. And if you have any questions, just shout them out while I'm doing this. It's going to drop Max into here. Okay. Let's do that. So this is the Max rig, and this is the typical setup for advanced skeleton. So for the rigs, if you want to, it's not necessary, but if you want to, you can add squash and stretch to the head, to the part of the head when you're setting up the face, which is kind of nice for animators. These are the controls for the face. So they have the brows, eyes. You can turn on the aim constraint for the eyes if you'd like. Right now, it's turned off. This is the eye control. So you can turn on the aim constraint and get the eyes to follow, which is kind of nice. By default, it's going to use the joystick. So they call it a joystick in Advanced Skeleton, this guy over here, to use the eyes. And then these are cheeks, nostril, then this is your mouth. So it has this really nice, what they do is, again, they'll create a wrapper. You designate the locations on the face, the edge loops that are going to drive the wrapper that wraps the face and then creates the blend shapes for the mouth shape. So that's how Advanced Skeleton creates the shapes. Theoretically, when you're using Advanced Skeleton, if you don't like the way the blend shapes are using, you can create corrective shapes from within the user interface. And again, these are the edges of the lips. It's got nice controls on the fingers, so if you want to curl the fingers, pretty standard. It has cup controls, cup controls for the hand, and then spread. Again, as an animator, I don't know. I don't like using those too much. If I'm blocking out the animation, I like to use something like that. But when I was in the studio, they would usually just get in the way because then you're sort of like adding layers of animation. Usually adding layers of animation onto your workflow that doesn't help you in the end, especially if someone goes to you and say, hey, I want you to change everything about that pose, and you're like, I've got all these other slider things that are hiding in my rig. And if for the switching, FKIK switching, that's where this happens, the FKIK blend. Again, these are the IK controls with the pole vectors for the arms. The way they handle, let's see. The way they handle the shoulders, there's a global control that controls, say like if I try to move the shoulder or rotate the shoulder. You can set the global so that this FK control ignores what the shoulder is doing and instead relates itself to, I guess it's relating itself to the chest. Let me see what the, hold on just a second. Turn the global off. So the global is kind of like a space switcher. I think that's essentially what they're doing. So here's the rotation. If I turn the global back to, so for a rig, they don't have a space switcher per se for a lot of the joints. They just use this global control. And for the legs, something similar. They've got this tool for the feet that well, they've got stretchy, you can turn stretchy. So they've got a stretchy control, you can turn the stretchy on and off. You can adjust the volume of the stretchy if you want to. So theoretically, the further you pull away from the body, the less volume you're going to get, but you can change that. Just kind of cool. I want to see, there's a, of course you can roll up onto the, you can roll the toe, you can roll up onto the foot. And you'll notice too, there's a function for these rigs, which is kind of nice. Swivel, toe, roll. Okay, good. It's one of the things they tout with advanced skeleton. So if you take the foot and you roll it, generally the foot doesn't know where the ground is. So what it does in the advanced skeleton, they'll actually take the pivot of the foot, and as you're rolling the foot left and right, the pivot will compensate. So you'll get a foot that's not going to pass through the surface once you've set this up correctly. If you're rolling the foot left and right using this, what do they call this control? The roll toes. If you're using the roll toes control, it'll adjust the pivot dynamically for you so the foot doesn't pass through the ground. What does they have on the hips? So if you turn the center over the feet and you're actually moving the foot control, this is a feature which I thought was kind of interesting. Let me get this foot back to where it was before. Sorry. Turn this off. So on the hips, there's a control called center by way of the foot, or between the feet. If you turn this on and you're moving the foot, it's going to dynamically try to place the hips over the center of the 2 feet. So if you're doing like a walk cycle or something, that could be useful. And in the advanced skeleton, hold on. There's a pose driving systems. Hold on just a second. They've moved some of my tools around. Is it Walk Designer? Okay. So there's tools that you can use to in advanced skeleton also that help you to diagnose any problems with the rig. Like once you've got it rigged, once you've got it bound, once it's all, the weights are all painted or adjusted, you can go in and create, it's called a walk designer. And again, what it does is it takes animation that it has, let me speed it up a little bit. It's got these pre-created animations in the system, so then you can kind of like test out the character that you've created by placing these animations on the character and kind of see if the deformations are working, which is kind of fun. And then you can use the dial down, so if you want to walk sad or run sad, maybe walk angry. This is the angry walk, I guess. It's kind of funny. His shoulder's a bit weird because I had rotated it earlier. So it blends it with whatever animation you currently have on the character, and I don't know, it's a good way of diagnosing what you've done with the character. Again, anyone can use the advanced skeleton folder. So as long as you're dropping in the install mill into that location, it'll run it. And it also has a picker that you can use. You can also take these pickers Advanced Skeleton lets you use your own, if you create your own image, you can create your own image for the picker. You can readjust. They have an editor that allows you to edit this picker and change the regions in the image that you want to select, because obviously the body style, body type will change. So again, you can go in and edit those regions to edit the picker itself, so that if the animator opens it up, they'll get something that looks similar to the rig that they're using. And they do a fairly decent job of a tutorial on how to set up that edit. So you've got one for the body, you've got one obviously for the face. Again, this is like this like weird female face they have for it. But you can use it to edit directly to the rig. This is kind of nice. And they do mention for the face, if you're having problems with the performance of Maya, one thing that Advanced Skeleton is doing is these controls that are sitting on the surface of the face. Again, these are controls that you can select directly. In the list, there's the A controls, B controls, C controls, aim control, visibility, that's the aim constraint for the eyes. If they're turned on and you're having a lot of problems with Maya playback, and you're having a lot of problems like even just trying to play blast the thing, it's because what's happening is their rig is set up in such a way that it's got these little pieces of geometry that's sitting on the surface of the skin, and Maya has to calculate all of that dynamically on the fly. So if it's running really slow or sort of choking, you can turn off these control visibilities and just use the joystick to animate the character's face if you want to. Again, as an animator, I don't know, I'm not too comfortable using this kind of interface when I'm trying, like maybe if I'm blocking something, I would use an interface like this. But as an animator, again, I have a better feel for the character when I'm manipulating the controls that are directly on the face. For me, it's a lot easier. Again, a lot of sliders over here in the channel box. It's not as desirable as actually physically manipulating the character. So I think animation, their setup is fairly decent for that. Did you guys have any questions up to this point? Okay. Let's create a new scene. So what I did was I took the max geometry, and I'm going to see if this works, but I just took their max geometry and I'm going to bring it in. I'm just going to open it up. I stripped it of all the controls, so I could bring it in. Generally, Advanced Skeleton, it's better if the body is separate from the head. It makes it a little bit easier. It's not impossible to do it otherwise, because you can designate those polygonal shapes for the different regions of the face or the head separate from the body. It is easier though, especially for the first time you're rigging something, if the head is separate from the body, the eyeballs are separate, the brows are separate pieces. The script is looking for upper teeth, lower teeth, tongue, so those kinds of what am I trying to think of? Those kinds of bookmarks on the characters, what makes it easier to create one of these auto rigs in Advanced Skeleton. Another cool thing about Advanced Skeleton, so if you want to get started, you bring in your model, you can look at it, make sure there's nothing any funky about it, and you start out with your pre-tab. So it literally tells you how to prepare the model for rigging, and it makes it really, I think, fairly simple stupid, honestly, because it tells you group your model so that you have one top node and name this group Geo. So it's going to look for something that's saying Geo, then use the model cleaner tool. So it's going to go model clean. And it tells you this will clean up your model, create a top level group called Geo, and then now ready for clean. So it creates it. It's going to create the top level Geo group. Now when it cleans it, what it's going to do is it's going to export each piece of the body as an OBJ. file format so that there's no construction history. So it cleans out all of anything that's got in there that's kind of messy construction history or anything that advanced skeleton later is not going to like as much. If there's anything hanging on to the geometry that doesn't need to be there, they do a pretty good job of cleaning it out this way. Again, when you clean it, hold on. Might be having a problem with more than, hold on, just, oh, okay. Let me just, hold on just a second, let me pull this out here for a second. It's got a GeoGeo. Let's just, I think it's already, yeah, okay, good. Okay. Sorry, it was having a, so those are the kind of errors you'll run into when you're using advanced skeleton. So learn how to use your script editor and then your announcements, or read the errors and figure it out. Usually, like what it was telling me was like, look, there were two groups named Geo. I can't figure out which one I'm supposed to be using. So I deleted the first one, and now I have the cleaned rig, or cleaned model. So it'll show up in the 4 views, and what they're expecting you to do now is save this new clean geo. So I'll save it, and I'll just say max clean geo. So it's clean geo. I'll go to it'll say, I mean, literally again does everything for you if you just follow it step by step. It's asking you to create the rig file, so I'll create a new scene. So this is my rig file. It's going to be a Maya MA file. It's going to say reference in the geometry, so it's going to ask me to create a reference using my max clean geo. So it brings in the clean geometry, so now we can go ahead and place the bones in the body. So now when you're done with the preparation phase, then you go into your fit. So in the fit, this is where we can draw in or import in whatever skeleton you want. So they've got bipeds, they've got Bendy, game. I haven't gone into the game, but they have these new integrations with game engines where you can bring in a rig, or skeleton that's more game friendly, or game engine friendly. They've got these others that I think I've had some students use the dinosaur. Did you use the dinosaur? It had some issues, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So they have some of these. Again, this is version 5.3, which I don't think we were using in class at the time.
We had 5.
We had 5. So it's gone up. I mean, they've been doing some error fixing. Usually it's things with Maya 2017 now. They're having problems like the IK handles, when you move them, the auto key wasn't working on them. They fixed things like that, like little fixes. But they have the logs for those fixes on their site. So if you're looking for what's being fixed in each of those versions, they do have documentation. So if you're running into problems and don't know what's going on, they usually have a little log file, and you can find those fixes. But we're just going to import the biped rig. Just hit import. So this is our fit skeleton. Again, I don't have a lot of screen space to work with on here. But in the fit skeleton, you'll get a jaw joint, as well as the two eyes, and then the top of the head. They're expecting you to put this right at the top of the head. So when it builds the rig, it knows where those parts of the body are. You can, if you'd like, you can look down at the feet, and this is the pretty standard foot for advanced skeleton, but again, this is just one where you just would have like a shoe and not actually the toes. So if you wanted the toes, they allow you to import or export extra limbs. So if you wanted the foot, the more advanced foot that has all the toes, and under the extra limbs, you can import that into the body. I don't want the extra on the foot, but you can bring in the foot. I want to replace it. Yeah. So this is the new foot with all of the toes. So it allows you to do that. It does the same thing with the hands. Of course, this hand is the one that's already got all of the fingers in it. And then if you wanted to import a tail and stick it to the character, you can do that as well. So, and I think it should be attached to the root, but yeah. So there's the tail. And the thing that's cool about Advanced Skeleton, usually it doesn't crap things out. Didn't get recorded. But you can just go in and delete. Usually you can go in and delete the bones that you don't need, the joints that you don't need. In Advanced Skeleton, you usually will be able to figure out what you want in the rig. So if there's something in the foot, it's usually in the foot, you don't need those pinky or big toe locations. In the foot, you can delete those out, or if there's a finger, like an extra finger you don't need, you can usually delete that out, and when it builds the rig, it will ignore those limbs, or those pieces of the limbs. Okay, so the whole time, if you get confused about any of this stuff, they've got little question marks on the right-hand side. So if you click the question mark, it will show you what it is that you're trying to do, or what Advanced Skeleton is expecting you to be doing with the character. So if it's like the IK labeling, this is what I was talking about with the IK labels. If you're labeling the joints, so if you give it these labels, shoulder and hand, what it's going to give you is an IK FK arm setup. If you label the chest and root in this way, it's going to want to give you an IK FK spine. So it uses the joint labels on the body to figure out what extra attributes that you're going to be giving or want to give to the rig. And not only will it give us these attributes, again, hip, foot, and you get your pole vector, but once you set up the labels, if you want to add extra attributes, you can do that as well to the rig. And I can show you how that works. Let me first, I think I can just delete this and import another one. Again, in the interest of time, I may do like a really ugly, that's another thing too. So, good, okay. One thing that they have by default now, which is good, but when you're trying to place the skeleton, obviously you don't want the skeleton, say like the hips, spine, neck, or head, to be offset in any way from the center line of the character. So it used to be an option, but it's by default now that the lock middle is turned on. So if you're having problems moving the bone off that center line, it's because the lock middle is activated, and it's good for a good reason. Because if there's anything asymmetrical about the way you're setting up the skeleton, you're going to have problems when it builds the rig. So that's why if you look at the channels here, they've conveniently locked them for you, because that lock center is turned on. You won't be able to translate it in X, and you won't be able to rotate the spine off of the center line. Obviously you can rotate it in Z, but not they don't want you rotating off of Y or X and getting off of the center. The rest of it, honestly, is just the grunt work of placing everything in the foot. again, I don't have a whole lot of time to like mess with this guy too much. So I'm just gonna make it really ugly and dirty and sort of make it sort of work for this guy. So his chest. Something like this. This. Wait. Sorry. This. Do you guys have any questions at this point? Okay. Yes, that would be smart for sure. Yeah, it doesn't like anything that doesn't it doesn't understand. If it's, I think that's the one thing that can be difficult is that it's extremely finicky and it doesn't always tell you why it's not working. So if you're trying the face setup, the nice thing with the face setup now, again, it has a separate face section, which I don't have time to go over today, but in the separate face section, it has the same thing where it will have, when you're preparing the face, it's going to ask you, okay, where's the face? What are you using for the face? And for this character, it's easy because the head is separate from the body. So you select it and you load it. You select all the head and you load it. So when it's talking about face, the whole head is including the eyes, including the teeth, including the brows, everything that's on the face. That's what it means for all the head. Right eye, left eye, upper teeth, lower teeth, and tongue. So you'll load all those things into the face. So that's another thing in this new version. It used to be that you loaded everything up, set the markers on the face, and hit a button, like a single button, and it would just crap out like on stage 4, and you had no idea how to fix it or how to troubleshoot it. But now, once you've got your preparation set up and your fit complete on the face, so again, it'll show you everything that you're trying to, everything you should be selecting and marking on the face. Once you've got this set up, it's got these really nice helper images for you. When you're building it, they have the old button, the Build Advanced Face, which again, I think for most people is going to be a useless button. I don't know what your experience. It's a useless button.
It's actually been a lot better. I've had a lot of success with it lately.
Okay, all right.
It's just like it used to be horrible.
Yeah, so they've improved it. It also matters how you model the face, obviously, but this is a bit of a beast, but it's got 30 steps in it. But this is essentially what the button is doing. So you can go through each of the build processes and find out essentially where it dies and fix it, or at least attempt to fix it, and then keep going. So that's the nice thing about Advanced Skeleton is it's not just a single script that's running and you have no idea what's going on under the hood. They now give you a lot of control over what's going on in the face, which I really like about the program. Again, it's really simple, stupid for people that don't really rig a lot like me to figure it out, because I can go in and like, oh, okay, this is not working. I don't have to go into the scripts and like figure out what's going on. Or with the error message, which might be some sort of indescript, archaic sort of word system that they're using for their scripting. I'm like, I don't know what an end of syntax means. What does that mean for my model? Like, yeah. Okay, back to the body. Let's do it.
So when you're placing these joints for the body, you're going to want to place the hips first, because those are driving everything?
Yes, and then another thing too is I'm not even showing you what, which I should, which I will. One of the most important things in when you're rigging a character, obviously, is the joint orientation. So you're not seeing any of the joint orientation here, but you can, excuse me, you can go into the fit mode. Hold on just a second. I just want to double check because they've moved some things around. Okay, good. Yeah, did. So, hold on. Okay. Okay. So what you see in red and what you see in black back here are that's where the location of the pole vectors is going to be. So what I've done is under display, so you're asking about placing the joints. Under display, I've turned on the geometry. You can change the way that it displays the geometry. Currently it's in cylinders. You can choose boxes, you can choose spheres, you can choose bones if you want something that's more, I don't know, anatomically correct, which is kind of cool. I don't use that because I think it's distracting. And the bones get really weird if you've got a non-standard character. And also the spine looks odd. But this is a lot easier for me to understand. What it's doing with the fit when you're dragging the bones around is it's using the bone location, and then it decides how large the cylinder should be. You're trying to fit these cylinders within the geometry, because when it goes to binding it to the skeleton, it's going to use these cylinders to create the body cage that's then going to be used to create the influences on the mesh. So the closer you get this fit to your final model, the better the outcome of the build for the rig will be, but also later when you're trying to bind the skeleton to the mesh, you're going to get a better result. When you're fitting these cylinders into the body, right now when I'm moving the joints, what you'll notice is I'm not getting, you're not really going to get, the orientation is not following currently, because these cylinders are not only denoting where that cage is going to be later, the skin cage, they're also letting us know where the orientation of, say, like the x-axis, the x-rod down the bone is. And it's not currently turned on, or it's not currently updating the character. So what you need to do, make sure, is when you start fitting the skeleton into the body, I like to turn on the cylinders. I like to make sure that we're in fit mode. So this is fit mode. If I turn the fit mode on, it should update the skeleton and the rig. Should, please. It's waiting. Okay. So in the fit mode, it'll actually tell you fit mode. When I'm dragging my joints around, should update. Wow, it's really slow in my 2017. It'll actually update dynamically the orientation of the joints. You can turn it off, obviously, if you're not using fit mode, but again, if you turn it off, it's not updating the joint orients on any of the bones that you're, any of the joints that you're manipulating. So just be aware of that's happening. If you turn it off, like you can go, you can turn it off and move the skeleton around, fit it into the body. If you want to see it and just run the fit one time, you can go to update. It's a manual update. You can still, so the program allows you a lot of leeway to sort of screw up your own rig as well. Okay, can I update? Update. Okay, there it goes. So if you want to change the joint orientations manually, it says you can do it manually. Or if you'd like, it allows you that button, so you can hit it once and it'll update immediately, just that one time. Again, it's weird because obviously you see our pole vectors now shot up into the sky, so this, when it builds, it's going to be a bit odd for the placement of the character. So I'm going to move it back and just set myself into fit mode.
Can you modify the point that the pole vector is placed at?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's based on the joint placement in the arm. So if I took this joint, like the center of the arm, and I moved it, that's what's going to drive where the pole vector is. It will start to rotate around. Again, I think if you take the joint and you manually orient the joint, then that pole vector is going to rock around depending on where you're orienting the elbow. So if this all looks very interesting and terribly boring and riggy-ish, we can move forward if you'd like. But remember, fit mode sets the joint orientation, extremely important. You can display the geometry however you'd like. You can change, if you want to change the gap so you can see sort of like what's going on. Again, all this is doing is it's just a display, but it's giving you the orientation of the joints as well as where the cage later is going to be built. So if you're happy with the fit, you can move on to the build, and you can build the rig. This one usually works. This button is one of the easy buttons that does actually usually work. So based on the fit, where I put the fit skeleton, which mine was pretty rough, you saw that. I didn't really have the fingers in the right places. This foot was sort of in the right place. The spine, go. Okay. So there, done. Rig. Ta-da. That's yay. That's what you're here for, the demo. That's where it gets exciting, right? Riggers. Exciting life. I like it. Yeah. So currently this is when you could check out if you wanted to, I don't know, see if some of the stuff is working or it's totally broken, you can do that. But again, in the interest of time, they have different deform options. One of them is your standard skinning. So you can just skin, you select the deform joints, which is your skeleton, set the smooth bind options. It will skin the rig just like you do normally in Maya, old school way, just binding the skin with a smooth bind. This is, again, the old school way of doing things. They also have deform option 2, which you'll notice a lot of the demos that they give online is they're using the skin cage. So if you create the skin cage on the body, it's going to use that fit geometry that we initially set up in order to create the skin cage. Now, something I didn't show you with the fit geometry is that you can actually change its shape to fit the body better. So if I want to get rid of the skin cage, I don't want to use it, and I decide like, I want to go back to my fit. So if you've made a mistake, this doesn't look right, you should be able to go back where it says toggle fit. Go back to my fit skeleton, back to before I bound the skeleton to back before everybody clapped and said, "Yay, you built the rig." And go back to my fit, set up my geometry. Maybe I'll take down the gaps in these. So for each of the joints, if this is not fitting properly and the cage that you're creating for the bind is not working properly, you can go back into each of these joints and you'll see down below there's twisty joints. Bendy joints are turned off. You can turn them on, and when you turn them on, when it builds the skeleton, that twisty function is going to be in the skeleton. But you've got this fat Y and Z, and the fat function is a function of the actual the cylinders. So you should be able to adjust the cylinders, and then depending on how you adjust the cylinders, the ones on the other side of the bone are going to update dynamically, so that you can get a nice fit for the character. If you do that, and you create the cage that then is going to drive the deformations, you'll get a better initial bind from the skeleton to the skin. Do you guys have any questions on this? Is anything confusing? Sounds ridiculous? Okay.
Is it possible to use advanced skeleton specifically just for the face? Like, let's say you rig the body yourself, or you just want...
Should be able to, because the face is a whole separate separate module that's separate. You can.
They have an option so you can set like what joint is the head joint. If you have like a separate body. That's your joint.
Yeah, you saw the module. Sorry, ice in my mouth. You saw the module for the face, so it's sort of separate. Like as long as you prepare it, Galicia was saying, as long as you prepare it, you let it know which piece of the which parts are the geometry of the face. And honestly, I've used it where I didn't have those things as separate pieces. You can just designate the polygons. So if the head is not a separate piece of the body, it doesn't matter. Advanced Skeleton will know if you select those polygonal shapes for just those pieces, like the head, again, the eyes, teeth, tongue, and the brows. It knows how to create the wrappers, and as long as you're marking it up properly, it will create the controls for it as well. So, yeah, that doesn't matter. You can even draw, if you want to, this fit skeleton. If you want, you can just, like, let me turn this geometry off. Something you show in their demo too. If like you have a joint, if you have an extra limb and you want to create, an extra limb on the character, it'll rig this. Now you might want to tag this as a what was it, like a shoulder and a wrist. Tag the joints so that when it builds the rig, it knows that you want an IK FK switch with the bones. So you can go out from wherever. Like I just drew it from. You select the bone and hit the draw function. You're just going to draw the limb, a new limb. You can import. You can also. I could also. Okay. You can also. I forgot to mention that too. You can also. Sorry, I'm just looking at the. Alicia, you can import. You can. Oh, that's right. So you can also, if you want, you can just take a limb, and if I wanted to, in Advanced Skeleton, if you needed to, you can select it at a certain point, like the shoulder, and just duplicate it too. If you need some like 6 arms or something. That's another thing it allows you to do. Just duplicate the arms, and then you actually reattach them somewhere else. And as long as it's got the tags, it'll know how to build the rig in the skeleton. Now, again, I can just delete it. And again, I can go in and delete certain parts of the foot that I don't need or whatever. And it usually does a pretty good job of building the rig no matter what. And when I was talking about the tags, you can come in with the tags and these are the attributes that you can add or remove from any particular joint. So if you want twisty joints, if you want bendy joints, if you want the in-between that I was talking about, which again, I don't really use. There's aim constraints, a wheel, there's world orient, free orient, all kinds of like different attributes that they've created that all you do is you select the joint you want it to. See, this one already has twisty and bendy joints. You can go to the attribute, I don't know, just like an in-between. Well, maybe not in-between. Aim, I don't know, anything actually. Maybe a world orient, which I don't think it has. So you can add any number of these attributes to any number of the joints that you want. And then when the control is created, that control, you'll have access to these new attributes using the controller that's created that joint. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want it. And I'll just build this again. Rebuild it in Skeleton. Okay. So that's another thing that's nice about Advanced Skeleton is normally, I'm also making a big mistake. Normally I would be saving before I hit any of these buttons, like before each of these steps. Again, because it could crap out and Maya could die and then you're left with a big pile of nothing. So save before you push any of these buttons. Because it could go bad really quickly. Okay, so I've got my I've got my skeleton. Theoretically, I put my fit in the body in a nice way. And then for the deformation option, I'm going to choose option 2. Option 3 is okay. I'm not going to talk about option 3. Option 4, if you've got really nice edge loops on the character, you can actually use the corresponding controls and the edge loops that are right next to them, like say on each of the wrist, the elbow, shoulder, and then the chest. And you can designate or tag the edge loops, and it will use the edge loops to actually drive the influences on the body. So that's one way. Another way that you can create the deforms. The fastest, or one of the fastest, obviously, is just to skin it normally, and then have to go in and tweak all the weights yourself. And then I'm going to try to create a cage model and use that. And I'll just copy the weights from this. I don't really know what it's going to do, but we'll see. Wait, hold on, sorry. Hey, there he is. Okay, I should. Oh, right. I have to select the objects. Brett knows what he's doing. Let's go back. Okay. So I'm going to select the model and then copy the weights from the cage. Did it work? What did it do? Should have worked. Yes. Sorry, let me just double check. See if everything's kosher, non-kosher. Come on, you can do it. Why is it being stupid? Okay. Hold on just a second. Doing something wrong now. Yes. Copy weights. Okay. Huh. I don't know why that didn't work. Because I don't think I have to select both of these. Just delete this. Let's try this again. And I don't know why it's not working, but it's okay. You know, it's advanced skeleton, so. Huh. I don't know why it's not working. It's weird. Okay, we'll just do this way. Sorry, I just wanted to set up a dirty bind. I don't know why the cage wasn't working. I have to figure that out. For some reason, it didn't like the way I had it set up. Maybe I did something before. Again, saving before you hit any of those buttons helps. It's probably because I was jumping back and forth and doing some weird stuff. But this is just a basic smooth bind. And if you wanted to see sort of if it's working really quickly, you can drop him into the walk designer. His fingers are going to be a little weird, obviously. Yeah. That's a basic skinning, smooth skin. Again, I would rather use the cage, and you can adjust the cage, and if you need to adjust the shapes in the cage, once it creates it, you can create, sorry. Once you've created the cage, you can go in down into your poses and actually create corrective shapes. And the way it creates corrective shapes is it'll actually take the joint that you select, say it's like at the elbow, and it creates, or it shows you where the locators it used to create the bind for the skin is. It would draw out profile curves, and you edit those profile curves using sliders, so that when you bend the arm, you get a profile that you want, and you tell it to go to the corrective shape. And that's what I was saying. It uses a blend shape, corrective shape, that then you can use an envelope and turn on or off if you want. But it'll use a blend shape so that when you bend the arm, you don't get that weird, like gap next to the on the inside of the elbow. And it'll use that corrective shape for the rig, but unfortunately, again, for advanced skeleton, that's something really heavy that's sitting on top of everything else in the rig. So what they do suggest is they have a function in the advanced section of this pose editor where you can take that corrective shape and bake it onto a new piece of geometry. So it's a much cleaner. Rig. So did you guys see? Does it seem confusing? It's pretty basic stuff. Like, I think as long as you get the fit correct with the skeleton and use those shapes to fill the interior of the mesh, you're going to be halfway okay when you build the rig and then do the bind. Again, this is a smooth bind. The bones are not in the right location for the fingers, but once you get them in the right location for the fingers, and then make sure that the paint weights are correct for your rig. And because you can go in and adjust the weights for the rig too if you wanted. Sorry. So this is just like any old, bind to a skeleton. You can go in and adjust the weighting once you've bound it to the rig, and that's probably the fastest way, but the one that works better for me at least is once you've got the fit correct in the body with those cylinders and you run the rig, it will use again those cylinders to create the cage that then you can drive the deformations with. And that's, in my experience, it's been much better than just doing it this way. This would be more time consuming because then you have to go in and like adjust all the weights on the villain character.
So you keep saying it drives the deformations. So when you set up using the fit method, does it keep that geometry after it's rigged? Or does it just transfer the location of the geometry onto the deformations?
It just transfers the location of the geometry to the cage that it's going to create for the character. So you saw it create that cage for the character, and then you can actually, it's kind of nice too because they have so much in this tool, because you can create they have a publish tab which explains rig publishing, like what does that mean. You can publish it from here as well, but hold on just a second. You can create poly boxes for just the rig. You can also create like a mannequin geometry, so it'll use your high geometry and create a low geometry for you. Let's see if it hold on just a second. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Just make sure I'm not in this mode anymore. So that's a mannequin, but it can also create topology. Sorry. Oh, okay. That's fine. But what this does as well is if you have the high version of the geometry, it will create a low version for you, which is nice because sometimes you have to, create that yourself. But it'll cut up the high model and create a low version of the model. And I think sometimes you could actually set it up so it sets up the head high, low, and then the body high, low. So if there's an animator using it and it gets too heavy, and they just want to animate the character quickly, they can use the low version. I know it's in here. I just had to fiddle with it to get it to. I apologize. It feels like really rushed, but the program is so expansive, and so the nice thing is it's so modular as well. So anything you can think that you want to rig with it, say it's like a quadruped with wings and a tail, like it's some sort of mythical creature that's got like a scorpion tail or something with wings, and is that a chimera? You can do that with advanced skeleton as long as you tag those joints and the bones with the proper name tags. It will know that you want an IKFK setup with bendy or twisty joints, that kind of thing. So it's really kind of cool. I've had students that set up like a really nice tail with it, and clothing. Again, it's a lot of kind of tweaking it and messing around with it to get it to work properly. And that's the grunt work. I think that's the grunt work, honestly, is getting all of the. It's really fast. It'll build a rig really quickly. It's just you going in and then adjusting all the weights to get it to form properly.
Which is definitely preferable over building everything from scratch.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Rutland, for his demonstration.